Welcome to A Mindfulness Experience with access to Integrative Medicine Health Institute, the GW Office of Integrative Medicine and Health, and the GW Resiliency and Well-being Center. AIM is the first 501c3 nonprofit in the Washington, D.C. metro area to provide integrative medicine services to low-income and terminally ill patients, regardless of their ability to pay. The office is a global leader in integrative medicine, focusing on professional development and community outreach. The center takes an evidence-based whole person approach in the health and wellness services it provides to the GW community. Today we have with us Leyla Kenny, who is a psychotherapist, yoga instructor, and board member at Circle Yoga Cooperative. That's what's on her t-shirt. She's a mindfulness instructor at Sibley Memorial, and she is also an adjunct professor at the Catholic University of America here in Washington, D.C., although all of you probably know that. Anyway, I am going to put the spotlight on Leyla so she can begin her wellness talk. Oh, by the way, folks, she's also going to be doing the mind-body practice.
Thank you, Jeanette. Good. So you guys can hear me well?
Yes.
Oh, good. Well, thank you so much. I didn't know you were going to introduce me. That was so nice to hear that. Thank you. Yeah, so I, over at Circle Yoga Cooperative, I teach yoga there with Yael Flusberg, who I know comes and does some of these wellness practices with you all. And so I think very highly of Yael. So if Yael recommends for me to do something, I jumped on it. And when I reached out to Jeanette actually a few weeks ago with maybe about 4 or 5 different topics that I could share with you all today. And some of them, was yoga nidra, or looking at chakras, or just neuroscience and mindfulness. And one of the topic options was yoga and walking. And Jeanette mentioned that sounds like a good one because she didn't think you guys had this before. So hopefully something like this is a little new to you all. I do want to say that, as Jeanette mentioned, I am a psychotherapist and yoga instructor and a mindfulness instructor. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not a physical therapist. So even though we're going to get into the body today, please keep in mind that this is coming from a yoga instructor. I've been teaching yoga continuously for over 25 years. So I've taught yoga for a while, and definitely my best form of learning has been through my teachers and also through my own injuries. So that's where I'm bringing a lot of my knowledge from. And what we'll do is we'll start, since this is called a mindfulness experience, we'll go ahead and start with maybe a 5-minute mindfulness practice. So I think you all are probably familiar with mindfulness and the posture that works for you, but go ahead and find your mindful posture. And if you'd like a little bit of suggestions on that, it would be sitting with on your sits bones evenly between the left and the right sides of your hips, finding a little bit of an even lengthening through the front and the back body as well. And if you like, you can either close your eyes or keep them open. If you have your eyes open, just a soft gaze somewhere, perhaps just looking at out a window if you can, or at a picture, or just gazing softly at an object that's in front of you. And then take a moment to find your breath and see if you can land your awareness on your breath without necessarily needing to change anything, just observing how the body is breathing for you. Notice what parts of your body are expanding as you inhale, what parts are contracting as you exhale. And then very gently beginning to deepen the breath so that as you inhale, you feel the breath moving down towards your belly and up towards the collarbones and shoulders. And allowing your exhalations to be complete as well, so that there's plenty of space for the next breath to come in. As you inhale, feeling the breath expanding a little bit more into the sides of your body, the breath moving towards the armpits, towards the sides of the rib cage. And just as you're observing your breathing, observing the energy that's in your body in this moment, observing the thoughts that are floating through the mind. No need to push them away, no need to entertain them, just simply observing the thoughts in the mind. That's energy. Observing as well the various sensations in the body. What parts of the body feel warm or cold, soft or tight. Just observing. And as well, observing what feelings are inside of you right now. Noticing as well the status of the nervous system. There's no right or wrong, just simply noting. All of this is energy. The experience of being alive in this moment. And then becoming aware of what it's like to be practicing mindfulness with each other in community. Even if you're watching this recording, noticing what it's like to be in community. And then take a moment for yourself to connect with your intention for joining in today, for listening in today. Notice your intention. Taking this opportunity to pause and to honor your intention. Honor each other's intentions. My intention is for all of us to just experience a little bit more ease in the body. Perhaps then that can translate into experiencing a bit more ease as we walk and move. Experiencing some more ease within, so that hopefully that extends out to the broader community. Just taking a moment here to notice the sounds that surround you, the sounds in the space that you're at and outside of the space. If you like wiggling your toes a little bit. And when you feel ready, gradually and gently opening your eyes and taking in the colors, the textures that surround you. So good. Yeah. My yoga experience first began, I used to live at a place called, it still exists, Kripalu. It's the Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health. It's up in Lenox, Massachusetts. And there, every single meeting we had, we always started it off with a mindful moment. And I think it was very helpful. Either that or starting off with a good joke. I think either one of those can put us in a good state of mind. So I am going to share screen. I do, as Janet mentioned, I teach as well at Catholic University. I teach social work, and I teach at another place called the Washington School of Psychiatry. And so I love to teach, and I like sometimes to use slides. So I've got a slide to share with you all here. And you know, some of us, we can be more visual in how we learn things. So hopefully you can see this well, and yeah, good. So we're going to get into talking about walking a little bit. So the first thing is, you know, our ancestors were apes, and we have learned over time, we've evolved to move up to walking on 2 feet. And I think also there is an intention for us to kind of disconnect from our mammalian ancestors and to try and, you know, take, you know, draw the shoulders back and the chest puff up so that we're not walking with the arms hanging down like apes. But I think over time, some of us tend to overcorrect that and really draw the shoulders back way too much, which can cause the hips to go forward. So that's something to be aware of. And then also gravity does this wonderful thing where it just pulls everything down. So as we age, we do notice that the shoulders can start to slump forward. So we do want to find ideally something that's a little bit more in the middle. So we're not, you know, yanking the shoulders back and trying to stay upright that way. And then we're also engaging enough so that we're not hunching way forward and compressing the chest and all the other organs, but finding something in between. And then the question I have on this slide is, who taught you how to walk? And I think that can be really helpful to be aware of as well. How did your parents walk, or your caregivers, or, you know, whoever it was, your aunties or grandmothers, or whoever it was that raised you? How did they walk? And just becoming aware of that, because we learn by those who are around us. And if, you know, there are certain things that you want to change about how you walk, it can be helpful to be aware of where you originally might have picked up certain habits, so that you can choose what you might want to continue with or maybe relinquish. Some key areas of the body that we're going to work on today in terms that can help us with walking are the feet. We're going to get into the feet. So I hope you're comfortable getting familiar with your feet and the lower legs. The feet and the lower legs are far away from the heart, right? Just as the hands are far away from the heart. So it's the feet and the hands, the lower legs, they get the least amount of circulation. And so it's very important for us to introduce movement or self-massage to these areas of the body, so these areas of the body continue to get circulation. We'll also get into the pelvic area and the hips. And because obviously it's through the hips that we're able to lift each leg as we're walking and swing one leg forward. That motion comes from the hips. And then our posture is very important. As I was mentioning before, if we're either pulled back way too much or hunched forward, we want to make sure that we're putting ourselves in an optimal position with our upper body. So that's going to involve using core strength, your core muscles, the muscles that run up along the spine. And also the low back, the muscles in the low back as well. We'll see if we have some time to get into it. So it's a lot for us to do in a very short amount of time. I can't promise that we'll hit all those areas of the body together, but that's my intention. We'll see what we cover. These are some common conditions that we can experience with our feet. And I just thought this is a really helpful image to see. And some of you might already know that you are dealing with one of these things. There's hammer toes, and then there's claw toes. And this is a nice image to be aware of. There are certain things we can do manually in stretching our feet with our hands, or using a tennis ball or a marble or tissue. Some of you may have even experienced that in yoga classes or in physical therapy. But there's certainly these types of exercises we can do to try and counteract or prevent these conditions from getting worse. Bunions, this is very, very common. And do you see this cursor here when I move it? Yeah. So these bones here are called the metatarsals. We have them in our hands as well. And a common position here for the bunion in the foot is for this big toe metatarsal to start angling out. And then the big toe itself starts then angling back in. It's trying to correct itself, but it's leaving its metatarsal hanging out there here. And then when you've got a bunion, probably from the outside, what you see is this. And that ends up being very painful when that brushes up against shoes and so forth. So again, there are some stretches we can do that can help with that. If you notice a bunion starting to form, there's some stretches that we can do that can help with that. Of course, sometimes the best course of action might be surgery, but I'll show you some things we can do together. All right, so in yoga, as in many other practices, there is always some debates. And the slide that I had before for the arches of the feet was a different one, where it talks about the 3 points of the feet. And then there are some practices in yoga that talk about the 4 points of the feet. And I was having an internal conflict myself before, as I was thinking, do I want to show you guys the 3 points or the 4 points? And I landed on the fact that I want to show you the 4 points of the feet. So when you are standing, or even when you're seated in a chair, you can even do this right now. If you're seated in a chair, and if you're comfortable taking off your shoes, I highly recommend you take them off. You want to feel that you're pressing down first into the big toe mound. And this is the image of the big toe mound. It's the space right underneath your big toe. And then from there, I would take your awareness over to the outer edge of your heel. That's the second spot. Don't worry about the fact that this is numbered 4, but I take your awareness from here diagonally over to here. So you're still pressing down on the big toe mound. You've still got weight there, but then also pressing down through the outer edge of your heel. And by keeping your awareness on these 2 points at the same time, you might notice that the arch of your foot starts to lift up, which is very good. We want to start to engage these muscles in the sole of the foot. And then from there, taking your awareness over to your inner heel. So now you're pressing into these 3 spots. And then from there, taking your awareness and pressing down into the little toe mound. So that now with each foot, you're pressing into 4 spots. And when you do that, hopefully what you notice is happening is a little bit of a lift, a little bit of a spring, a buoyancy in the arches of your feet. And you'll notice that I never mentioned having your toes on the ground. You don't need to have your toes on the ground here. You're pressing instead into these 4 corners. All right, I'm going to introduce you to my assistant, and I've named him. I have a yoga student who actually helped me name him. So I'm going to switch over and show you my assistant. I'm going to stop share for a second and then take you over to my assistant, Mr. Bonaparte. So I actually think this one is Josephine. I think I'm sharing with you the female image, who I have named as Josephine. But so here is we'll call her Josephine here. And there is the feet. So I think this is fun to be able to see that there. And when I talk about how we've got muscles in the feet. I'll start putting some on here. Start to see all those muscles there that are in the feet, right? I'm going to take these muscles back away. And I just want to mention that in the feet, we've got, in each foot, I've got my cheat sheet here. We have 26 bones in each foot. We have 33 joints in each foot. We have over 100 tendons and muscles and ligaments in each foot. And then there's also over 200,000 nerve endings in the feet, which is more nerve endings per square foot than any other part of the body. So if you have been one of those fortunate people like myself who has had an injury in your feet, you know that there are a lot of nerve endings in the feet. It can be very sensitive. And then when we are walking, since we're focusing on walking, I want our awareness not to be just on the feet here, but I'm going to show you some of the muscles that we use when we are walking. So these muscles here, we'll see if today we get into them. This is the iliacus. You can actually reach around with your fingers and cup around the front of your pelvis. There are these beautiful fan-like muscles, one on each side, that you can use your fingers to massage into. And if these are tight, it can cause a lot of havoc around the pelvis and the low back area. So it's nice to become familiar with that. And then I'll show you this. These muscles are the psoas. There is one on either side of the body here. And the psoas, as you notice, goes from the inside of the thigh bone, the femur bone, and goes all the way through and up and connects into the mid-back. And the psoas remains tight when we're seated. So one of the other reasons that the feet and the lower legs don't get much circulation is not only because they're the farthest from the heart, but also because we tend to sit a lot, and then our hips are in the same position quite often. And so there's not enough circulation going down into the hips, and for that circulation to go from the hips down to the lower legs. So working these muscles can be very helpful for getting more circulation down to the lower legs and the feet. Let's see. I also want to show you some muscles in the lower legs, and then I will move Bonaparte away. He gets shy sometimes and he pulls away from me. So let's see here. I'm going to turn him around. There we go. All right. These are the gastrocnemius. And I am very much self-taught in terms of my anatomy, so I'm not sure if my pronunciation is exactly correct. I can have Bonaparte speak for us, but just to save time, I'll keep it at that. It means the two heads here. And this muscle here, these two heads we use when we're walking. So we're going to get into those in our practice. And then right underneath is the soleus, which we also use when we're walking. These are some outer muscles, and we use them quite a bit when we're walking. We use those two muscles when we're lifting the heel, especially when we're pressing off from our back foot when we're walking. And then we use some muscles in the front of the shins when we are lifting our toes and that front foot to lift up. So that's the muscle we're using in our front foot to lift up. So I'm a very visual learner, as I mentioned. So as we get into the body, it might be helpful for you to get a sense of what we are engaging and why. All right. Let me get back to the PowerPoint here. All right. So the psoas, as I mentioned before, this is another image of the psoas from the side view. And if the low back and the pelvis is out of alignment, it can cause the psoas muscle to not be happy, to either be overly extended or shortened. This is another image that I really like. And this is, if you have overarching in the low back, this is if you've got flatness in the low back. And I have to say, with over 25 years of teaching yoga to, I don't know how many yoga students I've taught to over the years, but quite a bit. I would say this is probably one of the most common positions I see people come in with, where the thigh bone is pressing forward. It's putting pressure on the front of the kneecap. The lumbar, the natural curve that should be there in the low back is taken out. The upper body is moving way too far back. The pelvis is pushing way too far forward. And instead, we want to feel that our knees and our hips are aligned directly above our heels. When we're standing, we want to feel 2/3 of our weight over our heels. And we want to feel that natural lumbar curve, not an overextended one, but certainly we don't want to take the lumbar curve away. And that the thigh bone is directly above the pelvis. So I'll talk more about that as we get moving here. Also, if you are like me and you have I have scoliosis. If you have scoliosis, there can be an unevenness between the right and the left sides of the body. So sometimes, and you can see this sometimes in a mirror, where you might notice that one hip is higher than the other, maybe one shoulder is lower than the other. And then there is a tendency for our outer hips, the outer muscles in our glutes, to be tight, and that causes the legs to turn out, which is not an ideal position for the body to be moving in. So we just want to be more and more aware of what is our default mode, so that we can start to correct that, so that we can move with more ease. And then I highly recommend that from today's practice, that maybe you pick one or two things that felt good for you, that would be easy for you to do. And then you do these in the morning, first thing in the morning when you get out of bed, or maybe even before you get out of bed, and put weight on your feet and on your legs. And maybe some of these stuff we do today, you could do while sitting in bed or lying in bed before you get up out of bed, so that you just start to move with more ease. And then something else I wanted to ask is if anybody has tried Nordic walking. I'll end the share screen to see, has anybody tried Nordic walking? It's hard to see, for me to see all of you.
You can mute yourself if you wish to answer the question. And I can remove the spotlight, and that way you can see everyone.
Has anyone tried Nordic walking? That's walking with the poles. It's walking with the poles. Nobody's.
I have tried them.
Okay. Lynette, it's nice to hear your voice.
Yes.
It's a fantastic form of practice. There is actually, Circle Yoga is a cooperative. It's not, it is also a nonprofit in that way as well. So hopefully this doesn't sound too terrible, but I wanted to also say there is let's see, a Nordic walking. Let's see if this came up. Did that come up for you? There's a Nordic walking workshop coming up at Circle Yoga in May. And so it's run by Camille Martone. She's also a mindfulness instructor. And I have not tried it myself. I have some neighbors who do Nordic walking, and I've heard them talk about it. You use 90% of your muscles. So use as many muscles as you do when you're swimming. And you've got the pole, so it can really help you with balance. If you've got issues with your back, because you're using your arms with the poles, it means that when you're walking, you're not putting as much pressure on the muscles of your back, but you are able to strengthen your arms instead. And so it's something to give a try. It's starting, I think it might be starting to get more and more popular.
Leyla, please at some point send me the link so I can share it with everyone, or type it in the chat box.
Okay, all right, I will. Yeah, I'm not good with multitasking to put in.
Okay, so don't worry about it. Just send it to me afterwards.
I'll send it to you afterwards for sure. For sure. Yeah. The more I got into mindfulness, the less I was able to multitask, I realized. And let's see if I can get back to my slide here. All right. So yeah, so that's it for my slide. So I'm going to ask to see if you are comfortable getting up and walking. And if you are not comfortable getting up and walking, you can march in place in your spot as you're seated. You can just march in place, which is actually a very good practice to do. I've taught yoga to some judges who were told as well that before they get up from the bench, and walk out in front of everybody that's in the courtroom, to march in place so they get that blood circulating into the hips and into the legs, so that then when they stand up and walk, they can do so with ease. So you can either stay seated as you are, or I invite you to stand up and just walk around a little bit in your space and become aware of how you're walking. And again, if you're comfortable taking off your shoes, I recommend you do that, because we want to articulate through our feet so that we don't lose that mobility. As I mentioned, there's 33 joints in each foot. So we want those joints to get motion so that we prevent having the feet shuffle when we're walking. There's a few reasons why we might shuffle when we're walking. There's actually a lot of reasons why we might shuffle, but a couple of them might be because we're losing that articulation through our feet. And then another reason could be a lot of tightness in the low back and the hips, so that it makes it hard to move. Also in the outer hips, it makes it hard to move. So there might be a little shuffling because of that. But just walk around in space a little bit. Just walk around in your space and see how it feels as you're walking. See if you're naturally turning your legs out a little bit, or if the toes are facing forward when you're walking. Notice when you walk, or do you feel that articulation from heel, ball, toe? Or does it feel like you're just mostly just stamping your feet down one at a time? Notice as you're walking, if it feels like you need to really lift up from your low back, or notice if the opposite is happening, where you're swaying a lot. I had one instructor call this lifting kind of the John Wayne walking, and the swaying the Marilyn Monroe walking. But you want to see, do you do one or the other, or not? Just starting to be a little bit more aware, and please be aware of the space that you're in as well as you're moving around. And then what we'll do is we're going to come to seated position. And this is a series here that we're going to do today for our movement today. And I am going to stop sharing the screen now, and so that we can do this together. So let me see if I can go back to speaker view. Let's see if I can get myself on speaker view. Let me see if I'll pin myself here. There we go. All right, so hopefully you can see me nice and easily. And once you come to seated, it's helpful when we're wanting to find proper alignment to first check our alignment between the front and the back body. And then second, check the alignment between the two sides of the body. So the first thing we're going to do is, as you're seated, maybe come towards the edge of your seat and just rock your pelvis a little forward and back. And so that you're becoming aware of where your lumbar spine is, your low back is. So we'll overarch the low back. We'll get that lordotic, big lordotic curve here. And then we'll flatten the low back. Here you're tucking the pelvis under. It's a posterior tilt. This is called a posterior tilt and an anterior tilt. And just go a little forward and back. And in general, I would say if you can once a day, do this forward and back movement to make sure that your pelvis has this mobility as well. And then find the neutral spot. And a neutral spot doesn't mean that your low back is straight. There's a little bit of a natural lordotic curve, a little bit of a curving in, a little bit of your lumbar spine going in, going towards the front body. Hopefully that makes sense. And feel free to ask questions at any time. So you've got that natural neutral position here in your low back. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to get into our feet. And so you're going to want to bring one foot up. And this is probably one of the hardest part of the practice, is just trying to get that foot up towards you. When you get that foot up and rest it on your thigh, notice if you've taken out that lordotic curve in your low back, and see if you can find that again. And if, because of your body, everybody's body is unique, you can't bring your foot up, that's okay. You can do a lot from standing. And I should have mentioned this right before we began. If you have a tennis ball in your space, grabbing that tennis ball, a potato works just as fine. So does an orange, works really well too. Apple might be too painful, but you can use a tennis ball underneath one of your feet here. I'm just going to adjust this camera so you can see. So if you can't sit with your foot up on your thigh, you can either also get two socks and roll them up like a ball, and you can use the socks. Or if you've got a tennis ball, just stand, maybe with one hand on a wall or a piece of furniture, and just roll that tennis ball underneath your foot. And then the rest of us are going to do a little bit of a massaging here for the foot. So if you can get one of your feet up, then you're going to start by just warming up your hands first. As I mentioned, the feet, the lower legs get very little circulation. So we're going to do a little self-massage to get some circulation into the feet. So once your hands are warm, then we want to warm up the feet. You always want to make sure that your body is warm before you stretch it. And you even want to make sure that your body is warm before you strengthen it, because your muscles could be out of alignment. And if you're strengthening when the muscles are out of alignment, you're just making the problem worse. So you want to make sure everything is warm, everything's in good alignment before you start strengthening and stretching. So I'm just using my hands and warming up my foot here. I'm just squeezing around my foot. You could also rub if you wanted. You could clap around if you wanted. Just get some warmth there in the foot. And then once you've warmed up your foot, you can use your fingers like pinchers, my thumb and pointer finger, and pull your big toe away from your little toe. So you're getting space here. You're widening the toes apart from each other. And then pulling the second toe away from the fourth toe, widening them apart from each other. And then that middle toe is kind of left out of the party here. So we're going to grab that middle toe and take it around for a spin in one direction and a spin in the other. And then if you've got a bunion forming, what you can do is you can place your thumb where that part of the bunion is that you see it pop out, and push in, and then with your other fingers, pull your toe, the big toe, away from the other four toes. So I don't really have too much of a bunion. My feet might be starting to form one. So I'm going to put, again, my thumb where that metatarsal would be poking out, and then with the other fingers, pulling away from the other four toes. So hopefully you can see that. So this is one way to start to kind of autocorrect. And then for the claw toes and hammer toes, one nice thing to do is to just pull each toe straight out. And you can go one toe at a time here. And I'm trying to pull not just from the tip of the toe, but really from where the toe connects into the sole, the main part of the foot. Just pulling straight out. And then you can also kind of push down on each toe like you're pushing down on a piano, on the keys of piano. Push down on each toe. And you can also push down on each toe in the other direction as well. We're really getting into these joints here and releasing all of that out. And then stretching the front of the foot. So we're going to draw your toes back and stretch the front of the foot. Some people call this pointing the foot. The term that's used is plantar flexion. And then the opposite, which is flexing the foot, dorsiflexion. And so I'm using my hand to get a nice dorsiflexion, and I'm even using my hand to pull back on the toes as well. The more we can find that articulation between the toes and the ball of the foot, that will also help us as we articulate the feet when we're walking. And so just going a little back and forth between the pointing and the flexing. And then there's also, if you've ever sprained your ankle, this is probably how you sprained it, inverting the foot. So you're using your hands to turn the sole of your foot in towards you, and then using your hand to turn the sole of the foot away from you. And if you were using the tennis ball, you could do this with the tennis ball where you roll your foot. This is inverting, and this is everting. So going a little back and forth and trying to get that articulation as much as possible from the ankle, not so much from the hip, although there's going to be some movement in the hip. And then you can circle the foot around in all four directions. So you're pointing, you're inverting, you're dorsiflexing, you're everting, and then reversing that. All right, we've got one more foot to do. But before you go to the other foot, you could stand up. That's a good practice in and of itself, going from seated to standing up, and then walk around. And as you're walking around, notice how each foot feels as you're walking. The foot that we just worked on, do you feel a little bit more articulation through that foot? You feel a little bit more energy, some more chi, some prana. Whenever you're ready, getting into the other foot. So warming up your hands, warming up your foot. Pulling your big toe away from your little toe, the second toe away from your fourth toe, and taking that little middle toe round for a spin. And then with your thumb pressing down where a bunion would be forming, push in towards your foot, and then with your other fingers pull the big toe away from your other toes. So my thumb is pushing down in one direction, and my other fingers are pulling my big toe in the opposite direction. I'm trying to do the opposite motion of what happens with the bunion, if you remember that slide. And then we'll point and flex the foot a few times. So this you could do just seated on the edge of your bed in the morning before you actually get up and put weight on your feet. Something happens when we sleep at night where I feel like my whole body turns into an ironing board. It gets very, very tight and stiff. And so it's very nice in the morning to take a little bit of time to stretch out before you start walking around or going up and down stairs. And then inverting and everting. And then taking your foot around and trying to get all those four directions as you spin your foot around in one direction and then spin it around in the other direction. And then releasing that down. With your feet on the floor here, so this is a good action for the hips, for the core, for the thighs, all of those muscles we use when we're walking. We're going to bring the weight onto the feet. And if you can, maybe doing this without using your hands on the chair, or if you need to, using your hands on the chair and coming up to standing. And with your hands around your thighs like this, I've got my thumbs on the inside, fingers on the out. You can just rub up and down your thighs as you're hinging from the hips. I'm not bending my back at all, but I'm kind of going in and out of a squat with my knees over my heels. The hips are extending way back. And then bringing yourself up to standing. Make sure that my head is not completely cut off here. But So if you've got that, if you did have a tennis ball, I know a lot of you probably don't have one because I didn't mention for you to have one, but if you did have a tennis ball, you could roll the tennis ball underneath your foot. You could lean in and lean away, and that's a nice way to massage the foot. You could wrap your toes around the tennis ball and release. If some of you have done physical therapy before, you might have been told to try and lift marbles with your toes. That's a good practice. Or if you don't have marbles at home, a nice practice that I like to do is to just have a tissue on the floor and to try and lift that tissue with my toes. And that's a nice way to start engaging those muscles that are in the sole of the foot. So from here, if you are comfortable standing, holding on to something, so either holding on to a piece of furniture or the wall, having your feet parallel to each other and lifting your toes up off of the floor. When we lift the toes, we start to engage those muscles in the front of the shins that I was showing before on Bonaparte or Josephine. And then we'll do the opposite. We'll release the toes down and we'll lift the heels. And so when you lift the heels, you start to engage those muscles in the calves, the gastrocnemius and the soleus muscles. And you can also just go back and forth between those two. So you start warming up these muscles in the lower legs. Again, those lower legs tend to lose that circulation. So this is a nice way to make sure you have that circulation. And then shake that out. Shaking in general is really wonderful for the nervous system. If you have a dog at home, you notice that when they want to release some tension, they shake. Right? We see it a lot in animals that when they want to release tension, they shake. And the same thing for us. If we shake, it helps us release tension. So just shifting your weight a little bit and shaking. And it's also a nice way to challenge your balance. Just shift the weight and shake one leg at a time, or you can even start to get your arms involved in it as well. It's a nice way to start to build some balance here. If you have an empty wall space, or if you don't, you can close a door and stand with your back against the door. And go ahead and do that and see if you can bring the back of your head to the wall. So my heels are not touching the wall because my thumb is in the way. And so it's the back of my head I'm trying to get onto the wall here. And then notice what parts of your body are touching the wall and what parts of your body are away from the wall. Just starting to become more and more aware. Let your arms hang down and let your arms be long, like an orangutan. So you're really letting those shoulders release down away from the ears. And then from here, without changing anything in your lumbar spine, without taking that curve away from your lumbar spine, see if you can draw your navel to your low back a little bit more. You can just bring your belly in towards your low back without flattening the low back. So we're finding that capacity to engage these core muscles without tucking under and taking the tops of thigh bones forward. Take a few breaths here. And then go ahead and release. And again, just shake out each leg and give it like a new one. Right. We're going to do one more physical practice and then we'll do a relaxation here. So another practice that can be very helpful, again, you can do this with your hands on the wall or your hands on a piece of furniture. I'll do it with my hands on my chair here. And if you did have a tennis ball, make sure you don't step on it by accident. Or to start to get a little bit more into these back muscles of the legs. And there's the connective tissue that is as the name implies, it's all connected to each other. So when there's these connective tissue in the back chain of the body, so as you stretch, let's say if you were stretching your there's the connective tissue, so that if you were actually strengthening one part of the back of your body, you're strengthening all of that area in the back of the body. Or if you're stretching the front of the body, you're stretching all of that connective tissue, the whole front part of the body. So that's something to be aware of here. Step your right foot forward and your left leg back, so you're in a lunge, and you can bend your front knee over your heel. And we're going to lift that back heel up off of the floor. Now, if you've got stuff going on with your toes and a lot of sensitivity in your feet, that might not feel comfortable. In that case, you can just angle that back leg out a little bit and hang out here. But otherwise, keeping that back leg parallel and lifting your heel up. And now you're engaging the back chain of this back leg here. From the sole of your foot all the way up through the back of the leg, there's an engagement. And you're stretching the opposite side. You're stretching the front chain of the body here. So here we're now stretching that psoas muscle. And we're engaging here through the hamstring, through the soleus, through the gastrocnemius. We're engaging the muscles in the sole of the foot as well. And we'll just switch that out. So you're switching your legs. And you want to make sure you're not standing on an imaginary tightrope, but that your feet are about as wide as your hips. And really engaging the back leg by lifting that heel up. So you engage the muscles in the back of the leg. And the more you engage the muscles in the back of the leg, the more of a stretch you're now getting through the front of the leg. And you're feeling that lengthening through the psoas. And what happens when we sit for a long amount of time is the psoas is contracted. And then when we stand up, it's still contracted. And so I don't know if you've ever experienced this. I've experienced this where when I've been sitting for a long period of time, when I stand up, I'm walking around like this because I can feel the front of my hips are really tight. So doing a lunge can be really helpful to just start to open up the front of the hips. All right, now we're going to do some stuff from reclining, a little bit of a resting to help release the psoas, release the muscles in the back. And you can do this from a reclined position lying on the floor. And if you're not comfortable lying on the floor, you can certainly do this from a seated position. If you are lying on the floor, there's two positions I recommend. And I also just want to show you a safe way to get down to the floor. So one way to get down to the floor is to have your hands on the chair and to extend one leg back, the lunge, like the lunge that we just did before. And then slowly releasing that knee down, bring the other knee down. Now you're on your hands and knees, and you can come to your side and get down to the floor. Another way to get down to the floor is to bend your knees enough so that you can start to place your hands straight down onto the floor and then walk your legs back to come onto your hands and knees. Or you can come up with your own way. I'm sure many of you can improvise. And once you come onto your back, if you've got that chair handy or an ottoman handy, or even a couch, you can swing your legs up onto the couch or the ottoman or the chair. I have a mindfulness instructor that calls this astronaut pose because it's like astronauts going up in a rocket ship in this position. Another option is to lie down with the knees bent, and my feet are wide apart from each other, and my inner knees are resting against each other. This is a nice restorative position. Either one of these, what's great about it is, just like when your back was against the wall, you know that your spine is in good alignment, and your head is able to release back. If your head is hanging up here, because there's a lot of tension in your neck or shoulders, you can grab a pillow, a thin one as much as possible, and place it underneath your head so you can relax the muscles around your neck. And also here, your psoas muscles have a chance to just release. Gravity is pulling it down towards your back body, these muscles towards the back body, and that's a good thing. If you prefer to stay seated, that's fine as well. And then if it's comfortable for you, go ahead and close your eyes. And just take a few moments to find your breath. And just as we did in the very, very beginning of our practice, we're going to notice the rhythm of the breath. And then start to notice some of the sensations in the body. What parts of the body are feeling warm? What parts are feeling cool? Notice if you feel some of that warmth in your legs and your hips. Notice if you feel some of that warmth down through your ankles, your feet, and your toes. Maybe feeling some warmth in the belly. With your awareness resting on your belly, just letting the belly be soft and open. And coming back to your intention for being here, for listening in, for joining in today. Taking a moment to pause and honor your intention. And taking a moment to also pause and to honor this body. And think about all the ways your body has helped you move through this world. Taking a few more breaths. And when you feel ready, slowly opening the eyes if they're closed. And thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to put in the chat box the information on that Nordic walking workshop now as well.
That was a wonderful practice. I can say that we've never had one quite like that, so we hope you will want to come back because that was great. And I know Dr. Kogan's going to be really sorry that he missed this. Everyone, I'd like you to know who we're going to have with us next week. That will be Dr. Mary Babcock, who's the medical director of RTS Integrative Medicine in Great Falls. And then we're going to have Shervon Lawrence, who's been with us. Both these folks have been with us before. She's the owner of Restore Tranquility and a certified yoga therapist and cannabis-assisted psychedelic therapist. So I'm quite sure that she and Dr. Kogan will have stuff to talk about. All right. Leyla, thank you again for coming. And that was a great PowerPoint and a great practice. Would you feel comfortable allowing us to share like a PDF of the PowerPoint?
Sure, should I email it to you?
Yes, please email it to me.
Sure,
That
sure.
would be so great. It was really helpful. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah, if
fun.
anybody wants to tell Leyla thank you, you can unmute yourself or type it in the chat.
Leyla, this is Lynette, and I want to say thank you very much. All of the things you talked about with the feet, I experienced it with a chiropractor 2 weeks ago, and I do those things on a regular basis, the standing on my toes back to my heels. And I don't have a tennis ball, but I have another little thing that I rub my foot over back and forth, so to get that circulation every day. So it was very, very good. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Leyla.
Thank you. Thank you, Lynette. It's great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hope you guys enjoy walking outside on this beautiful day.
Thank you, Leyla. I do those fit thingy with my senior fit class. So it's really nice.
Wonderful.
I don't do yoga since my back surgery, but and we used to do that too. Thank you. Thank
cool.
you. Good day.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
All right, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy the sun. Go and practice the things Leyla taught us in the grass because it'll do your body good.
I'm going for a walk right now. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Happy
you.
weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.